Welcome to Being Revealed with Stephanie and Alex. I'm Stephanie Cunningham.
I'm Alex Holtzapfel.
We started this podcast to talk about the journey of personal and spiritual growth, ours and others. Thanks for joining us as we figure things out together. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the second episode of Being Revealed.
Second episode.
Yep.
Wow.
Being Revealed with Stephanie and Alex.
Yes.
That's the official title. So, yeah, the first one, we were like, I think the title is, I guess we're doing this.
Yeah.
So, and we got some really good feedback about that first episode. People were really excited to hear more about you, learn more about you and your story. And they really appreciated your openness and your vulnerability.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to offer that. So if you haven't listened to the first one, go back and take a listen.
It might be, I was worried it might be too long, but I guess if you're going on a walk or working out or whatever, driving, can go pretty quick. So
Yeah. That's what I'm used to. So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I don't know. I think awareness is kind of the theme for October that you were, touching up on.
Yeah, and the membership and the Seeker's Discovery Circle.
So, and then, the first podcast was pretty heavily focused on me. But, so what about you? Like, you didn't start off in this line of work or the spiritual path. You were in marketing and you were very good at marketing. You have all these awards and, and then for whatever reason, you decided to step out of corporate America and focus on spiritual health and mental health and health and wellness. So I know that as a younger person, you were sensitive, and but you might not have really understood that. Then all of a sudden you had like a change and you felt, you went down the path you did. So how did that awareness come about, or what sparked that awareness?
Well, there are a couple different things. So I created Revelation U in 2015, and it was really focused on coaching, right? And the goal for Revelation U originally, and I'm still wanting to do this, right, is have it be not only coaching, but the reason it's U, Revelation U with a U, is like a university, right? So have courses and different things out there for learning and growth, for spiritual awareness, personal development. So that was kind of always the goal.
So the U stands for university?
Yeah.
See, I never really...
Yeah.
I learned something new right now. I always thought it was just like a short version of YOU.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it can be both, right?
Yeah,
so
of course.
It can be Revelation U, like you, and also university. So that was the goal. Like I've been a lifelong learner. When I was in corporate America, I was always doing these different seminars and different training courses. I have a graphic design certificate, which I took 2 years and did that. I, of course, have my coaching certificate. I've done so many different seminars from Fred Pryor. I don't know if you've ever heard of Fred Pryor. If you're listening to this and you're in corporate America, you've probably heard of Fred Pryor because they do different skills courses. So you can do Excel, Word, and then there's Train the Trainer, there's HR things, there's lots of different stuff out there. So I've done a lot of those, always wanted to just soak up the learning. But when this passion really kicked off was when I was 12.
Yeah. Okay. So let's hear about that, because that's, young age.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And it's interesting when I've talked to people just over the last several years, when I've opened up more about the spirituality and what I'm really passionate about and allowed myself to be seen in a way that feels really good to me. A lot of people have had experiences like this when they were about that age, 12, 13. So like you said, I was always really sensitive. We talked about that a little bit last time too in the podcast. So when I was 12, I had this, what I call spiritual awakening, I guess. I just was in a space where I just kind of got a download, I guess, of this is what you're supposed to be doing, right? And that message was essentially that we're not doing things right as humans. We're not living in the way we're supposed to be living. And that I came here to help people better understand how to live in the way that we're kind of supposed to, if you will. I got that download. I'm 12 years old. I'm like, what the hell is this? Right? Oprah hadn't started talking about anything.
Well, yeah, and that's like, it's something for a 12-year-old to have that thought, let alone an adult. Most adults wouldn't even have that thought. So it is kind of like you just picked, you know what I mean? Like it was sent to you, if you want to believe that.
And I really do feel like it was sent to me, just the way it was kind of presented.
Yeah.
Right? And so...
Like you just picked up on it or,
Right. And so I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. And then shortly thereafter, I was talking to my cousin's boyfriend, and he was going to school to be a psychologist. I was like, oh, what's a psychologist do? I was, learning more about that. I was like, great, perfect. I got it. I'm going to be an adolescent psychologist. From the time I was in 7th grade to the time I started college, I was going to be an adolescent psychologist. That was it. Done. No problem. So I started at school at Ohio State University in Lima. And I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like it. I guess the only thing that I can explain why I didn't like it, it didn't feel like it went deep enough to me.
The psychology?
Yeah. I was interested in it. I liked learning about it.
It was like all the educational side of it.
Yeah. Like the clinical, so I realized that it was probably going to be more clinical, the route that I was going down. I really wasn't interested in diagnosing people. I didn't really have the verbiage as to why it didn't fit. It just didn't fit. Another thing I was interested in was philosophy.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I'll try some philosophy. I took a philosophy class there at the branch of Ohio State, and it was more logic-centered, and it felt very mathy, right?
Yeah.
Like those cause and effect, like math problem things. And as you know, math is not something that comes naturally to me. And so I was like, well, this isn't it. Now I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I just kind of felt like I had a bit of a crisis of identity because that's what I was going to do. I had it all planned out.
That's what you'd been thinking about for a long time, but it sounds like it wasn't. The educational side of it was not, you were more the emotional side.
Yeah.
But let me stop before, because I don't want to lose this thought, but it's interesting that you were talking about your kind of spiritual awakening, because mine was a result of pain. And I always kind of felt like, in order for someone to have a spiritual awakening, they have to hit bottom, or they have to have it rough. They have to have some kind of pain that forces them to change or to look elsewhere for help, which I think that it's interesting to see that that's not necessary.
Yeah.
Pain is a great motivator, and it does, a lot of times it takes pain for someone to change, but it's not the only means to spiritual awakening or awareness or whatever. So that's interesting that yours came to you and then you really picked up on it and you agreed with it, you know?
And perhaps I was just at a point where I was open at that time, and maybe that had happened to you earlier, but you weren't open to receive it.
That's true. Yeah.
So I don't know. That's a good thing to point out, though. And sorry. Yeah. So I mean, of course, I did go through some periods of anxiety and depression, and we can talk about that later too. But so I had that bit of identity crisis, and then I was like, okay, well, what the hell? I don't even know what I want to do anymore. And my parents owned a dealership when I was growing up.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, maybe I'll just get a business degree and then go back to work at the dealership, when I'm done. And my dad said, well, if you're serious about that, then there's this school in Michigan. It's a business school, and they have an automotive degree. like automotive marketing and management. Basically, you learn how to run a dealership. And I said, all right, that's cool. I'll just go there, So I went up there, had that experience. And then when I graduated from college that same year, like right before or right after, my parents sold the dealership. Now, I wasn't going to go right back into the dealership anyway. I was going to go do some things on my own and then come back into the dealership. Mm-hmm. But it just, that didn't work out, and that was fine. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I went and I worked for an automotive computer systems company. I traveled the country and I trained and installed computer software. So I set up the software and then trained people on how to use it. Yeah. That's what I did. And it was great. I love to talk, as you know, and teach. And I was having a lot of fun. But it was also a very lonely existence. Yeah. It may have been glamorous for a little bit, but I wasn't able to really create roots or really feel like I was growing up or having connections or anything like that. So I was on the road. I was calling my mom. I'm like, feeling really depressed, like very disconnected. The term around that time was quarter life crisis. Yeah. And I was definitely having one, and it just felt bad. And I didn't know what to do. I felt lost. Felt very lost.
Was this the first time you felt that way?
No. Okay. That was a familiar feeling. Mm-hmm. I actually, from a young age, had physical manifestations of anxiety, which turned into depression when I was in high school, and led me to be diagnosed as manic depressive when I was 18.
Which I was a pretty famous I was also diagnosed as that as well, which a lot of it was drug induced, but and I think there was other stuff going on as well. There's a spiritual hole that I kind of described. So
I like to say I answered the test, the questions on the test appropriately. Yeah. And that was the diagnosis that it spit out, because I actually took a test. Yeah. So, that's another story. That's a whole other story. Yeah. But yeah, and then so when I was in that time frame, about the 23, 24, probably 22, 23 time frame, I was traveling. I did that job for 2 years, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I just need to not travel. So I moved down I was in Cleveland, based out of Cleveland, where I didn't know anybody. Moved down to Columbus, and it was a lot better because I had a lot of friends down here. Right. And then I started really getting more involved in metaphysics, learning more about metaphysics. Right. Yeah. And I always had that deep, interest in psychology and human behavior. It was always a big interest of mine. Actually, what started, I'm sorry, I'd make a step back. When I was in college, I read the Celestine Prophecy. Mm-hmm. And that blew the lid off of everything. Yeah. That really changed my whole life, my whole perspective. Once I, got out into the world a little bit more, I started researching more about metaphysics, what that meant. I started learning more about highly sensitive people and empaths and what that looked like. And for me personally, I feel that manic depressive diagnosis wasn't necessarily accurate. It was more that I'm a highly sensitive person and an empath, and it was masking as manic depressive. Yeah. So I'm not saying there was nothing wrong. The Prozac worked somehow. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but it really, honestly, learning about that saved my life. Yeah. I started hearing about life coaching. And when I learned more about that, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's what I want to do. I'm 23, 24. I think I should probably learn more about life before I do that. Yeah. Right? So I really set the intention to use my life as a class. And I did all the self-study I could, read all the books on metaphysics and psychology and soul psychology. I went out to Arizona and I did a soul adventure, basically. I went out there by myself and just it was like a personal retreat, spiritual retreat is what I did when I was 27. And I would just, as far as the coaching part of it, I would just really get in and talk to people, you know, and get into their story and ask them questions. And people always naturally opened up to me.
Yeah.
So I leaned into that.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, you know, when I was 38, this thing that I wanted to do, essentially, since I was 12 years old, it was time to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did, my coach training.
Mm-hmm.
And I became a certified professional coach.
Mm-hmm.
And then it took another few years to leave corporate America. And I did that at a time when it may have seemed like that wasn't necessarily a good idea.
Yeah.
I was going through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, you know, it's kind of now or never, you know?
Well, yeah, it's a very, very interesting how you did it, becoming recently a divorced single mom, making almost 6 figures and just saying, hey, I'm not happy
Yeah.
in the job I'm in. And
Yeah.
you went and got your Reiki mastery, right? Or,
Well, that actually wasn't on the agenda at
wasn't?
first. No.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't been happy in the job that I was at. I was doing corporate marketing for an investment management firm.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to make a square, you know, a square fit in a round hole.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I was, you know, you mentioned all the awards.
You have a whole box full of them.
I'm a great people pleaser, or I was.
Yeah.
You know? And it meant a lot to me, right? I checked all those boxes. It was really important for me to achieve and to make sure people were happy with me and to do a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all externalization. And I knew that, but I was still afraid. There was so much fear
Mm-hmm.
to go do what I really wanted to do.
And you obviously really weren't happy.
Right.
Because those awards, I've never seen them out. Which,
Yeah.
you know, you still have them, but it's like,
Yeah.
if they meant that much to you now as they did back then, they would be up and displayed, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's true. But I'm just kind of a different person, I guess, than I was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's really, I think, what it was about. And when I was getting ready to leave, my ex had moved out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking to my mom, and I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to just quit and just. There was a specific thing that happened at work that, you know, kind of made the decision easier for me. But I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to move forward and do what I want. I need to at least try it. I'm not going to feel good about myself if I get to the end of my life and I say I didn't do this or I didn't try it. And I said, I just need to know that you support this decision. I'm not asking you to financially support me. I just need to know that you support this decision. And she said, we've been talking about this every day for years.
Mm-hmm.
I know this is not a snap decision.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know. And she said, I do. I support this decision. So I said, okay. And I decided to quit my job and go out on my own. And it's been an evolution ever since. But that first year was really all about getting back in touch with me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we separated in November, the divorce was final in April. And then from then, you know, it was really all about getting back in touch with me. And that was a huge, huge thing. I realized that all those things that I ignored about myself or that I thought weren't really that important were actually pieces of me, you know? So yeah, I was interested in metaphysics and I was interested in human behavior and psychology and stuff. And I thought those are just some interests. And, you know, in my previous relationship, those things weren't necessarily, I didn't necessarily talk about them because I knew
2 different wavelengths.
Yeah. And, you know, I thought, okay, previously I thought I'm just interested in this stuff. But what I came to find out is, no, this is ingrained in my DNA.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's like, this is really the stuff I came here to do and talk about and explore. And if I'm not doing it, I'm not honoring myself and my my true nature.
So it's almost like you decided, you know what, I'm quitting my job. I'm doing this because I want to try this calling. This thing has been calling me forever. I want to give it a shot. But really, it wasn't just like a new occupation or trying a new occupation. It sounds like going down that path really healed you as a person too.
1,000%.
You know, knowing about you and your story and what we've talked about was that, like you said, that first year, and even the first couple years, you know, you really healed like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes me wonder if you would have stayed in your old job, corporate America, would you have changed as a person? You know, what would have happened if you wouldn't? Because I wouldn't recommend to anyone like, oh, you're getting divorced and you're going to be single. Once you quit your steady job and go try to start your own business, because that's like, it's hard to run your own business. So that's very risky. It's kind of crazy looking at it now, because that is what, you know, it was like, that's another part of awareness too, because
Mm-hmm.
that kind of doing that helped you change as a person and it helped you heal and learn so much about yourself. Would you agree? Or
Totally. It helped me become, I would say, less that it helped me change as a person. It helped me live. I chose to live in alignment.
or become your true self.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was choosing. In that situation, I got to the point where I just couldn't do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I wouldn't recommend anybody. I don't tell people to, you know, blow up their lives. You know, it's not something I recommend. But for me, it was that knowing that it's now or never.
Yeah, and give it a legit shot. You know.
And also, interestingly, or not so interestingly, I had started meditating consistently about a year before my ex moved out.
Mm-hmm.
And I was meditating, and I've been wanting to do this for a long time, right? This transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if it was just, and obviously we were having problems, and I kind of said in meditation, if it was just me and Kyle, I would move forward.
Mm-hmm.
6 months later, Tommy came to me and was like, hey, are you happy? And it was like the universe put it on a plate for me and said, here you go.
Yeah,
what are you going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I know that's a lot to say, but that's what happened. And I was like, okay, I just need to let this all play out.
Mm-hmm. And you had support, you know, and you could have, and even to this day, if things don't work out, you know, you still have degrees and stuff. But your mom, like you said, when you went to your mom and said, and she's like, well, we've talked about this every day for years, you know, so you had support there, and you know, I'm sure that's scary, but like you said, it was kind of like you meditated on it and you said that, and then boom, it happened. So and then the thing happened at your job. It's like all these things were kind of pushing you to make that jump.
Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting.
If I laid out the timeline, it was so obvious that things were being set up for me to move in this direction. That was the time, and it was I was very clear that it was my decision to take it or leave it. It was my decision to change the patterns. It was my decision to take a different route. And I didn't have to, but I chose to. And, you know, my ex was like, do you think this is a good idea to quit your job at this particular point in time? And I'm like, this is the best time, I think. Might as well just start over.
Yeah, starting everything new, you know?
I
mean, and that takes a lot of courage. And with me, I'm a creature of habit, and I hate change, and I'm fearful of the unknown. So to just, you know, you're already going through a major life change.
Yeah.
You're going to, you know, and then to do that. But this, like I said before, you've had all these, and that was a level of awareness, or, you know, at that pushed you to be where you are now.
Yeah.
You know, or awakening or whatever.
Yeah. And that few-year process after was so incredibly life-changing, you know, because I just said yes to myself. I said yes to my true nature. I said yes to those things that I wanted to explore, and I explored them. I did different things. I leaned in, and, you know, the reason I became a Reiki practitioner is because when I was going through that divorce and separation, I ended up in the hospital with what I thought and my doctor thought were appendicitis or a gallbladder attack. Went to the hospital. They found nothing. They're like, there's nothing wrong with you. I'm like, there's something wrong with me. 'Cause I'm in a lot of pain. And then I realized it was energetic. Yeah. So I went and I had a Reiki session. Totally, it was one of the miraculous ones. Not every Reiki session is miraculous. You know, some of them are just dull and plain, and some of them feel really good, and some of them are totally miraculous. There are lots of different levels, right? Yeah. And I've had them all. And this one was really life-changing. And I said, wow, I want to be able to do this for other people. You know, and that's why I decided to go. So April was the divorce. It was like in June when I went through my first training. So, yeah, and that was a whole nother incredible experience, that journey. So it's been really cool.
Well, and it's, you know, what you were talking about at the beginning, when you first made that transition and you're like, this is a path I want to take, and you really dove into like the healing of self or the recreating of self, or, you know, finding it makes me think of early sobriety when, you know, I was going to a meeting every day, sometimes 2 times a day, getting there early, setting up, working the steps, reading the big book. It's like, but we were on 2 different like kind of paths, like, you know what I mean? Like mine was a result of like self-will run riot, and yours was a little bit different, but it's almost, they were both like, it just amazes me that you don't have to hit bottom to want to change or reinvent yourself or figure out who you are, you know, but there's different levels of pain, and there could have been pain there that kind of pushed you. Obviously there was, but so it's interesting because I feel like we both have had spiritual journeys and spiritual paths, kind of different things put us there, but they were pretty similar, you know. It's when we first met, and then the more we found out about each other, we really related, even though it was different, you know. So and that's why we decided to start doing these little podcasts, because we talk about so much stuff that, you know, and hopefully, you know, sometimes we get to rambling, but it's just amazing when we sit down and talk, the things that we dig up or come up with, you know. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And these 2 podcasts that we've, you know, just recorded, there's so much more in just the things that we talked about. There's so many different side stories, so many different side paths, so many different detours, and that hopefully we'll get into in the future. Yeah.
I hope if someone actually listens to these, that they get something out of them, you know, or can relate. Like I think we said the first podcast, that being able to relate is one of the biggest, like, I don't know, there's something about that kind of like opens the door to healing, you know, when you can relate to someone. So I don't know.
Yeah. And hopefully we can be that source of understanding for other people. Yeah. You know, and because that's what it's all about.
It is.
So thanks for listening. If you want to learn more about Revelation U University, as well as you, right?
Yeah, that's Revelation U, the letter U.
Yeah, that's right. Revelation U Reiki and Wellbeing. You can find us online, revelationu.com, Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff. You can
Spotify. Which is what you're probably listening on.
So. That's right. Yeah. So we do Reiki and coaching, and we do have some courses out there. And we'll be launching the Seekers Discovery Circle membership the first of the year. Right now it's in beta mode. It's going really well. It's exciting. I'm loving it so much. So watch for that.
All right.
Enjoy.
Till next time.